I find a lot of your opinion not just refreshing, but it makes me think of my late father, and how like that's how coaches talk, right? Like they don't what you see on TV where everything is all the I like to say people dot their I's with hearts, right? That's not the reality of players. It's when Phil Jackson. Some people thought he stepped in it when he was actually kind of soft on Carmelo, and he's like, well, he still holds the ball a little bit too much, and he can be a little selfish and dribble more than twice. He's working out of some of that ball hog stuff. Where he's like, that's what coaches have always said about Carmelo Anthony. He was more than fair. Whereas your book is, it feels like I'm sitting with you at a bar and you're telling stories. Is that a fair depiction of what this is?
That's so much of So much of the game has changed in the 30-some years I've been coaching. And one of it is the conversations of the game. And when I was working in ESPN, I just wanted the fans. I thought fans would want to hear maybe a little bit more behind-the-scene type of mentality of what goes on with the coach. I mean, most of my it's not, I don't know if it should be furious, George, but it should be frustrated, George. Because in the NBA, head coaches are frustrated. A good team who wins 50 games loses 32. And so there's 32 nights that you're really frustrated. And the game has gotten to the point right now that, the head coaching job is a job of figuring out how to try to get better, how to move forward, how to improve. But there's a lot of things, little things that come up on your radar that create some frustration.
You were frustrated coaching Carmelo Anthony as a basketball fan, but also somebody I think of decent basketball IQ. I don't think anybody argues with anything that you commented on. Why do you think there is such pushback on Melo in terms of, you talked about his lack of desire to play defense. On the other hand, giving him such supreme credit for being the most talented offensive player you coach. Like, none of these things are that anybody would argue. Why would some people be so offended by hearing it?
I think people think I'm trying to, hold a grudge or something. But Melo, all these things, all players as a coach, when you coach them hundreds of games, there are good moments and there are bad moments. There are difficult moments and there are happy moments. And that was my scenario. That was my take on Carmelo. I enjoyed coaching Carmelo, except the frustration was he could be a great defender if he wanted to be. He could be a great playmaker if he wanted to be. He could be a great rebounder if he wanted. There's not an aspect of the game of basketball that he cannot be a top-notch NBA basketball player. And so you, as a coach, you want to get the most out of your players. And Carmelo, again, he enjoyed scoring it probably a little bit more than I wanted him to do. There's no question. He's a great scorer. The game is easy. I think playing the game, I don't think fans understand how hard it is to score in the NBA. You can score in college, but when you get to the NBA, it's hard to be a big-time 25, 30-point game scorer. And Melo's been doing that for, 10, 15 years almost now. And I do respect that. Highly respect that. And he was a part of our teams, the leader of us winning a lot of basketball games in Denver.
You also talked about his lack of a father, Kenyon Martin's lack of a father. And when I read more thoroughly than I thought the excerpts, some information provided, in which you kind of took some of the burden off of them or some of the accountability away from them, saying, like, look, they carried a heavy burden of having all this money, being young, and not having any sort of real, male role model to emulate in their lives. How much is that discussed in NBA circles? The parenting background, how somebody is brought up, how they handle themselves outside of just in the walls of your practice.
Well, I think I could have said it better. I think if I went back and redid the book in some way, I could have said it better. But you have to understand, when guys aren't playing well, we're trying to figure out the hot button. We're trying to figure out the connection that can make him figure it out or help him figure it out. And, I was blessed with a good father and a great coach at Carolina that became my second father. And as you said, 21-year-old kids getting millions of dollars coming into the pro game where they're going to probably hit a wall. 90% of all NBA players are kind of hit a wall in the NBA. There might be that 1 in 10 player that's capable of stepping on an NBA court and being a really, really good player. It takes at least 1 year, sometimes 2, most of the time 3 or 4 years before a guy figures out how good the game is and how difficult the game is.
George Karl joining us on the Doug Gottlieb Show, CBS Sports Radio. The book is called Furious, George. I guarantee you will like some of the anecdotes. It's not all just hot opinions about some of these players. Okay, so the discussions about your other teams, about even a guy like Ray Allen, and what was he really like to coach for you personally? Like the image of Ray Allen has kind of changed. When he came in the NBA, he was a very, very versatile scorer, and then later on in his career, he became kind of this spot-up shooter. But what was it like for you to deal with Ray on a daily basis?
I thought Ray was, Ray and I thought had a pretty damn good relationship for the first 2 or 3 years in Milwaukee. It started to break down the last couple of years, and the tug of war that existed at times, I thought irritated him, and they irritated me.
Why? What about him would irritate you?
I have no ideas. Just maybe listening to the coach a little bit more. Yeah, the whole thing comes to, I thought Ray evolved into a star after we traded him to Seattle. I think it's Seattle where he started playing the great years, and then towards the end of his career, when he went to Boston and down to Miami, he became that spot-up shooter you talked about. But that was 15 years ago. That was 15 years ago. I've had 2 cancers. I've evolved. I'm a different person. I'm sure Ray's a bigger, better person, stronger person. And, I look back at that, wishing it wouldn't have disintegrated, but it did.
How do you, George Karl, our guest on the Doug Gottlieb Show on CBS Sports Radio, how do you combat some of the problems with the culture of basketball? And I bring that up because you had a good male role model in your father, and then you played for Dean Smith, and now we have the one-and-dones. Now, look, there have been some that have done the one-and-done thing and that have been really successful players. But by my estimation, you're better off, as you point out, evolving during that really important 18, 19 to 21-year-old range in college with a college coach who's used to coaching that age players, and you're away from your parents, but you're not yet a pro. Like, to me, I would have tried to keep him in school for 2 or 3 years. Some people say you let him come out of high school. The guys that want to go. If I put George Karl, commissioner of all things basketball, what would you do?
I kind of like the baseball system. The baseball system says you can be drafted out of high school. Or if you go to college, if you accept a college scholarship, you must stay 3 years. I have no idea why I like that system, but it seems like that would be a better system for everybody. It'd be a win-win-win. The great player, the guy that's probably good enough.
Yeah.
You take your chances.
Now, here's the only thing with the baseball system that people don't realize, okay? One, a lot of those guys go and they go to the minor leagues and they wash out, they never make it. But 2, you don't actually make real money until your 5th or 6th year. Like Mike Trout, until his 4th or 5th year, and they redid his contract, he was making $1 million a year. Like, it is, everybody says, like, oh, you go, it's like baseball, you go get paid. Like, those dudes don't get paid until their 5th and 6th years, those arbitration years, and that's when they redo their deals and sign these ridiculous contracts. I think but I do like the idea. My fear, I think, though, is that all of these kids think they're pros and they're all going to go. And then we'll have several years of very little incoming talent to the college game. Does that bother you in any way?
Well, Doug, I think the college game, a lot of things that are happening in the pro game are now going to the college game.
Sure.
I think they had over 750 transfers last year. I talked to a college coach last week. They think there'll be 1,000 transfers next year. So they're trying to find the job, the position or place where they can prosper because they think they might be an NBA player. They think they can make money playing basketball. So I think the game, because of its growth, because of the money in the game now, everybody is aware of it. When I grew up, and I don't even know if you ever thought about being a pro, I thought about getting a college scholarship. That was my goal. The Olympics, making the Olympic team was a goal, Now, every player that I ever talked to,
all they want to do is the league.
They want to make the league.
Yeah.
And the college game has been a great farm system for the NBA. It still is a great farm system for the NBA. But how could we work together and make the game better? I'm open to any suggestion.
Are you done as a coach?
I hate to say, am I done? You know, I think I'm always going to be a basketball coach. I think I'm always going to be involved with basketball coaches. And will I ever coach another game, another NBA game? I don't know.
I don't know how much you're allowed to talk. I know you're not allowed to talk about the Kings situation per se. Is DeMarcus Cousins fixable?
I think so. I think he is the most talented big guy in the NBA, and it's it's the coach's job. And I didn't do the job. I failed in my job in trying to figure out how to make it work. I probably made as many mistakes out in Sacramento as anybody. And,
So what type of situation will he flourish in? Because he seems like it feels like he's better, but they're still not in the playoffs, and you still have moments of that explosive temper. If you could put him in the perfect type of scenario, you don't want to say team or whatever, but type of coach, type of situation in which is realistic, like, oh, you put him in the Spurs. Yeah, okay, but that's not going to happen. Where would he flourish?
I'm not the one to ask. I failed.
Some say that LeBron has surpassed Jordan in his success and his greatness. One of my takeaways from the book was you point out when you took on Jordan after he had played baseball, he'd lost a step. He wasn't the same. People think of taking off from the free throw line. That was pre-baseball Jordan. And he did it with his mental IQ, his jump shooting, became a very good post player. But he wasn't the same athlete. We're seeing LeBron evolve as he's maybe not lost a step, but he doesn't have the same juice every night. But as a basketball guy, as a longtime coach, player in the NBA, LeBron or Jordan, who's better?
I answer it this way. It's diplomatic.
You're not diplomatic in your entire book, and now all of a sudden you're going to be diplomatic on my show?
Sometimes. I'll tell you how I feel.
Okay.
I'll take Michael Jordan because I've been with Michael Jordan, and I feel him. I feel how much he cares about winning. And I think to be a teammate of that would be unbelievable. And he's a great talent. He's one of the top 5 skilled players of the game. But if I had one game to watch, I'd want LeBron James to be in that game because he's one of the most enjoyable players to watch play the game because he plays it the right way. He's 6'9", 200 and whatever, 50 pounds, 60 pounds. And he does every aspect of the game pretty damn seriously every possession of the game.
As they're currently comprised, who's the better team, the Cavs or the Warriors?
The way I look at it right now, I'd say the Cavs are ahead of the Warriors. You know, I just think their confidence is at a good place. I think the Warriors will get there. But what happened last year with what I mean, I was uplifted by the championship last year. I mean, I liked LeBron going back to Cleveland and bringing what he told everybody he wanted to do and do it. I like J.R. Smith being on that team, maturing to the point where he's a major factor, an important factor on a championship team. Those are things that I think as coaches we enjoy watching. And I just think they've continued this year at a pretty good, last year they had moments where they were kind of going down a little bit. They're pretty stable right now.
Yeah, they're pretty stable. Whereas the Warriors have moments to which they're still trying to figure out what they have, who they are, where the ball goes, exactly. and who has it. And my point I made is I thought Steve Kerr was the perfect coach for them the past 2 years, but I think he's going to have to evolve because this is a very different team. Even the players he has had are different. Their personalities have changed with age and putting Durant and more pressure on them.
You're putting your point guard brains coming out here.
All right, the book is Furious George. It's out today, and it's the book everybody's talking about. Have you lost any friends over this book?
Not that I know of. I might.
Terry Stotts was like, George's a friend, but he shouldn't be talking about my players. It felt a little bit like there was a little frayed friendship, though. But there's nobody who's like, we're not friends anymore?
I haven't gotten that text yet. I might get it today.